So on Friday and Saturday, the Packers had a rookie minicamp, and during that period, they also had 18 different players come to try out. And since that minicamp, the Packers have signed 3 of those 18 players who are trying out. First off, we have here from Tom Silverstein, who reported this. Sources said the Packers signed Iowa State receiver Dimitri Stanley and Albany receiver Julian Hicks to deals after watching the two go through the team's rookie minicamp on a tryout basis. Stanley stood out in Friday's minicamp practice, catching everything that was thrown to him and making a one-handed catch that Coach Matt LaFleur commented on to reporters after the practice. And during this 2024 draft, the Packers did not draft any receivers. The past couple seasons prior to this year, they drafted a lot of receivers. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks. They spent a ton of draft capital over the past couple seasons on the wide receiver position, and it has really paid off. The Packers now have, I'd say, one of the deepest wide receiver rooms in the NFL, one of the most talented and youngest and cheapest wide receiver rooms in the NFL, because all these receivers are still on their rookie deals. And it was not surprising to see the Packers decide not to draft any receivers in this past draft. I wouldn't have been surprised if they maybe drafted one during that period. They decided to draft 0, but now they bring in 2 receivers to add to this receiver room in Stanley and Julian Hicks. And first off, if we look at Stanley, his dad was actually drafted to the Packers back in 1985, Walter Stanley. He spent a few seasons there. And Dimitri Stanley, the guy who got signed to the Packers the past couple of days, he spent 4 seasons in college at Colorado. And then the final 2 seasons he spent at Iowa State, so 6 different years in college. He's 5'11", 188 pounds. He ran a 4.52 40. And if we look here at his stats during his time in college, he never had a super productive year. The most yards he ever had was back in 2022. He had 33 receptions for 420 yards and 1 touchdown. In this past season at Iowa State, he played in 12 games, had 15 receptions for 139 yards. And then if we look at Julian Hicks, he is from Albany. He's 6'2", 201 pounds. He started off in college at Central Michigan in 2018. And then he went to play at Akron in 2019 and 2020. After that, he transferred to Albany. And then in 2021, unfortunately, he tore a ligament in his ankle, which ended his season. And if we take a look here are his stats during college. You can see his first year, 28 receptions, 313 yards. Next 2 years at Akron, 212 yards, and then only 18 yards in 2020. And then this past season, 2023, was his most productive year during college, where he had 50 receptions for 834 yards and 11 touchdowns. So a couple other receivers to come in here to compete. I think it's going to be tough for either of them to make the roster just because, as I've already discussed, there's so many talented receivers in this Packers receiver room. This now makes it 12 total receivers on the roster. Recently, we talked about former quarterback Alex Magoo has been moved to receiver with the Packers drafting quarterback Michael Pratt. The Packers, from seeing what Magoo had done in prior times with the scout team at receiver, they thought that he had a better chance there, so they decided to give him a shot. So the Packers are loaded at wide receiver, and it's going to be tough for these guys, I think, to make the roster because of all that talent. And then if we look here, here's the third player who was signed from tryouts. This is per Bill Huber from Sports Illustrated, who said this. The Green Bay Packers have signed guard Lecitus Smith after a successful tryout at the team's rookie camp on Friday and Saturday, Packers Central has learned. Smith was a 6th-round pick by the Arizona Cardinals in 2022. He started 2 games as a rookie but failed to make their roster in 2023. So another offensive lineman signed here to Green Bay. The Packers, in this past draft, drafted 3 offensive linemen, added a few other guys when it came to the undrafted players, and now they're adding another guy here. So he did play for the Cardinals back in 22. He played in 210 total snaps, 202 snaps at right guard, and 8 snaps at left guard, but he didn't have any snaps in 2023. And during his time with the Cardinals, he allowed 12 pressures and 2 sacks, and he also spent some time on the Texans and Eagles practice squad. So it's just another depth piece here for the Packers and their offensive line. And with these 3 new signings, the Packers will have to release 3 players per Tom Silverstein. That means they're over the 90-man roster. And so I'm guessing sometime soon we'll see the Packers, news of the Packers releasing 3 additional players. And in the past few weeks, we've seen so many different players come in here to Green Bay, from the 11 players drafted, the 8 undrafted free agents, and now these 3 players signed here after trying out, and we'll see 3 more guys released sometime soon. So a ton of new faces here in Green Bay. The Packers have a ton of depth at pretty much every single position now, enough to go through OTAs and have a lot of competition at some of these important positions, which we'll see, safety, offensive line, linebacker, all these positions. We'll see some competitions go down and see which players rise to the top. Maybe we'll see an undrafted guy make the roster. I think I saw a stat recently that for a long while, there's been at least one undrafted player who's made the roster. So you never know. It could happen. Some of these guys come through and can make a name for themselves. So we'll keep an eye on all these players. If you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys next time.